Sarah Thomas, and I'm the director of the Haase Library and Learning Center, and I am so glad to see all of you here today, and especially the students. We really, really welcome you. It's my pleasure and privilege to moderate the 9th Annual Scholarly Speaking Program. We look forward to hosting the Scholarly Speaking each year because we believe that Prescott campus authors deserve recognition from the campus learning community, and we are pleased to provide a celebration for you. Haase Library has a deep commitment to supporting the academic works of the Embry-Riddle Prescott community, not only through this annual event, but throughout the year in the new ERAU institutional repository, Scholarly Commons, which I introduced to you at the college meetings last fall. Scholarly Commons is a fantastic venue that showcases your publications with Google access by a global audience. Scholarly Commons is a permanent and durable location. I encourage you to submit your publications to Scholarly Commons and to selected works. If you need assistance, Brittany Blanchard is the lead research librarian on this project. Now, I'd like to invite Dr. Frank Ayers, Chancellor of the Prescott campus, to give a few introductory remarks. Thank you, Dr.
I suspect I need to use this because we're being recorded. Is that correct? Great. Okay, so I'll be very good. I would tell you that what's so special about today, and especially for the students who are here, that it is such a real privilege to get to work around the colleagues that I get to work around at this university. We have some of the finest faculty I have ever had the privilege to meet. Their scholarly work, their contribution in the classroom, their contribution to service to their university is pretty special. And also at this campus you see, while we might call them staff members, I think that really so many of us, either faculty or staff, consider ourselves faculty because we publish, we expand the knowledge, we spend time with students, and you see that, I know, in the Haase staff here. You see that in the faces you see that were flashing up earlier of those who have contributed to the body of knowledge for their disciplines. So it's pretty special to be, this is the definition of a learning community. And today we celebrate that learning community coming together to celebrate some of those who have really gone a little bit above and beyond. I'm also so pleased to see it whenever students are involved, and that's pretty impressive too. And at this campus, that's all the time. Students are involved in everything we do as colleagues very often, which is kind of neat. So I'm excited about what's to come, and I think if I stop talking, then the scholarly speakers will get up and begin to talk, and that will be a much better thing. So I'm going to get off the stage here. But thank you all for coming out today, and I'm just looking forward to what's going to happen here shortly.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayers. This program would not be possible without the dedication and commitment of the committee, of the Scholarly Commons Committee, the Scholarly Speaking Committee. The committee members are Joanne Evanoff, Chair, Brittany Blanchard, Dr. Akos Delnecki, Linda Eisner, Susie Roth, and Patricia Watkins. A special recognition goes to Kathy Hill, Steve Merchant, and media technician, and to Horizon's Mike Galante. Let's show our appreciation for their hard work to produce this program. This year, we have produced a bibliography with 40 authors. To our very delight, we have also included 4 student authors that are recognized at the back of the program. At the conclusion of the program, we invite the contributors to stay afterward for a group photo on the stairway, please, on the staircase. Please note that the program includes citation from calendar year 2013 only from those authors who submitted them to us. This is not an official or complete list. There may be other authors who are not included. Today, I'm excited to present those authors who have works published or papers presented in the year 2013. Dr. Bloom, the Chief Academic Officer, will be presenting the certificates of recognition. When I call your name, please come up to the front to be recognized for your publications. Quentin Bailey is on sabbatical. Angela Beck sent her regrets. She emailed them to me. Okay, so Dr. Richard Bloom. Brent Bowen. His research area is measurement of airline operational performance and quality, collegiate aviation education and scholarship and research methods. Erin Bowen. Her research area is industrial psychology and safety, aviation psychology, safety culture, and statistical research. Leanne Chen. Her research areas are foreign language and Chinese as foreign language, pedagogy, study abroad, college writing in a specialized discipline. Jack Crabtree. He's not. Nick Devereaux. Thomas Field. Oh, and his research area is international history of Latin America, Cold War in the Third World, U.S. diplomatic history, and contemporary Bolivian history, and he's one of our speakers today. Iacopo Gentilini. His research area is robotics. Javad Gorjadus. His research area is economic impact analysis and pilot shortages. Melissa Dotwall. Her research areas are archives and aviation history. Cindy Greenman. Her research area is accounting ethics, and she is one of the speakers today. Andre Grederson. Is Andre here? And John Haas. His research area is cybersecurity, securing the Internet of Things. Shigeo Hayashibara. And his research area is computational fluid dynamics and high-performance parallel computation architecture, and he is one of the speakers today. Elizabeth Hines. She's not here. Okay. James Helbling. Douglas Eisenberg. His research area is dynamics and control with applications in space robotics. Dorothea Ivanova. She has a class right now, and she said that she'd be coming in as soon as she could. Philip Jones. His research area is military, political, and cultural studies of the Southwest Asia region. Eileen Landis Groom. Her research areas are teaching, writing, and literature, and creative writing. David Lanning. He has, I think he has a lab or other commitments. Bayu Lastari. She said that she was going to be busy. Nika Nordbrock. Her area of interest is cowboy poetry, composition, and diversity. Brian Ratchford. His research area is astronomy. And Joel Skipper. His research area is knowledge-based systems, autonomous mobile robotics. Mark Sinclair, one of our previous speakers. Synoptic and dynamic meteorology. Daryl Smith. His research area is instrumental oscillation. And Robin Spada. The research areas are airport and aviation issues, environment, and security. Lance Traub, I didn't think that he was busy with the lab. Bill Waldock. Expert in safety science and aircraft accident investigation and other aircraft that have gone missing. And Bradley Wall. Is Brad here? Oh, okay. Patricia Watkins is in the Grand Canyon. McKelly Sanalin. I think I saw him. Gravitational waves detection and acoustic sensing. And Pong Zhang. Okay. Integrating technology and language teaching and learning in virtual environments. And student contributors. Libin Daniel, Christian Mihuk, Edward Matthews, Kellen Wagner, the likelihood of an Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram merger. So let's please applaud all of the authors today. It's always exciting to learn about the research which faculty has been conducting. Our guest speakers this year are Dr. Field, Dr. Greenman, Dr. Hayashibara, and Mr. Manderfield. This year we have 4 speakers because we have added a representative from the new College of Security and Intelligence. Our first speaker is Dr. Cindy Greenman from the College of Arts and Sciences. She's going first because she has prior commitment with the search committee for the faculty candidate. Dr. Greenman received the Outstanding Dissertation Award from the American Accounting Association Gender Issues and Work-Life Balance section. The title of her speech is Marital Status, Religiosity, and Experience as Predictor of Ethical Awareness Among Accounting Professionals.
This is actually what I wrote my dissertation on. It's about 3 years in the making.
Microphone.
Okay, I'll stay back here then, that's perfect. So I'll just kind of go through the process of it. The background behind my dissertation, basically since the year 2000, we've had a lot of accounting scandals. And for some of my accounting students sitting over there, you guys have heard me talk about Enron and Tyco and HealthSouth and WorldCom. Yeah, they're all nodding. These accounting scandals led to some of the largest reforms in the accounting world. The one specific scheme, AIG, they were a group of investors that lost over $544 million, and they had to be bailed out by the United States government. So, in the aftermath of this is what happened we needed more ethical transparency with our companies. It led to a need for balance of economic performance as well as good ethics. So the problem, my research problem, was that basically accounting professionals are placed into positions almost every single day having to make ethical decisions. And large companies are losing sight of the importance of ethics, and they're going more for the dollars any way they can get it. So my research was focused on the factors that might affect the ethical decision making. So I dove into the literature review. Basically the history of ethics is as ancient as the Bible or the Quran. The 10 Commandments are thought of as laws that guide our moral values. It was in 1906 when the American accounting program actually adopted their first ethical ethics code of conduct, so it's been around for centuries. The problem, though, here is with the religious influences, many of the studies that had been done before were done with college students who are really a captive audience. Not a whole lot of studies had been done on business professionals themselves. Also in my lit review, I worked on the work experience aspect, and wanted to know basically if a marital status had anything to do with our ethical decision-making process. Would divorced people or single people have different ethics than a married person or a widowed person? So my purpose was to lead, my research was to look at the relationships, add to the literature, and hopefully see if I could find any kind of influence on ethical decision making. You see my research questions here, if there's a relationship between any of my three variables. My participants, because I'm from Michigan, I was able to access the Michigan Association of Certified Public Accountants. Now they have over 18,000 members. What we did was I took 13,000 members who had signed up for their electronic email, did a random sample of about 3,000 out of those 13,000, and sent them a link to my survey. The instrument I used a 25-item vignette that was incorporated with a Likert scale, 1 to 5 Likert scale. This had been validated through different research, and I'll show you an example of it. That was the ethics side. For the religious, I used the Santa Clara Strength of Religious Faith questionnaire. And obviously for marital status, I had options for them to fill in. Here's an example of the vignette, and basically what they did was say whether it was or always acceptable on a 1 to 5 scale. So you see one of the questions, an executive earning $100,000 per year padded his expense account by about $3,000 per year. So they would have to say, is this never acceptable, is it always acceptable, or somewhere in between? This is an example of the Santa Clara religious test. Again, they would have to put in the line 1 through 4 whether they strongly disagreed, agreed, or strongly agreed. And this is basically the strength of a person's faith. Again, I emailed this to about 3,000 members, collected the data through SurveyMonkey. A week into it, I sent a follow-up email to try and further get more participation. I used SPSS version 19 for the statistical. Because it was non-parametric testing was done, I used the Spearman rank correlation and the Prescott-Wallace. Some of the assumptions I had to use, though, included that the person actually filling out the survey wasn't who I'd sent the email to. Which, you can have secretaries filling it out. It's also based on the premise that the survey was only emailed to members, which I kind of assumed because I was only using their professional email address. And then I also, you have to assume that they're being honest.
Go ahead.
Answers to my research questions, you can see that through the Prescott-Wallace, my research question number 1, would there be a significant difference between for ethical decision making and marital status? The Prescott-Wallace actually showed that basically there was no significant difference. It did not matter. My second question, here's some of the, you can see the results here. Standard deviation and the average. So there was basically no difference between currently married, divorced, widowed. Second question dealt with the religiosity and if that had any effect on their decision-making process. you can, the Spearman rank correlation basically put it at almost a 0. So there's absolutely no correlation there either. Here's some of the questions and the average response. 10 questions. Some of them skipped a few questions, so I had to take that into account as well. My third question dealt with the number of years of experience, how many years of experience they'd had, and if that had any effect. I did this one because I kind of thought, okay, were people first into business, were they more likely to try and commit fraud? Were they unethical before they learned anything? Or was it those people who had been in the business for 20, 25 years who knew the system and could figure out ways to get by it and being more unethical? So, and again, this one shows there's absolutely no statistical difference between the number of years of experience. You have years of experience from anywhere from beginning people all the way up to 25 years of experience, and it had no difference. So basically, in summary, there was no statistical relationship between the marital status, the religiosity, the years of experience on their ethical decision-making at all. Some of the limitations that I had to realize was that we only contacted members who received the email newsletter, and not the entire population of all of the members of the Michigan CPAs. Also, it was only those people who wanted to fill out the survey. And that's called self-selection bias, and it's only those people who really feel strongly about it who are going to fill it out. Also, I suffered from a low response bias, which is common when you're dealing with email surveys. Again, self-reported data is also a limitation, but I think one of the larger ones is the social desirability limitation, where people really just tell you what you want to hear or what they think is right. Time frame was also an issue, and I wanted to do the entire AICPA, the American Accounting Association, but they wouldn't give me access to their members. So take what you can get. So the significance of this would be that I felt like I filled a gap in the research. I added to the body of knowledge. Also, the review of literature actually encourages more investigation into ethics, so I plan to do that. Questions that I would have would be, if these three variables are not indicators or predictors, what would be? Where do we look next? So those are my recommendations. Is that? Yeah.
Out of the 3,000, how many did reply?
Out of the 3,000, I had 83. Yeah. That was still, that's 2.8%. That's 2.8%. 83 out of 3,000 replied. That's 2.8%. It was still enough to make the research viable. So it counted, but I'd still, it's a low response bias. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Greenman. That was fascinating. But okay, our next speaker is Dr. Thomas Field from the College of Security and Intelligence, and he will tell us about his new book and his focus on nation building as army building, USA, the CIA, and military-led development in revolutionary Bolivia.
All right, so rather than talk only about my research, I wanted to put it in a way that would maybe be encouraging or helpful for some of you students who are thinking about delving into academic research, whether it's for your undergraduate thesis program or for graduate school. So I'll do a little bit of reading, but I'll also try to add some things to it. And process, for me, I think is the most... Someone's laughing. Is this what I do in class? So process for me is really important because many of you think, well, how am I possibly going to get from A to Z? And you see a book written, and you say, well, how could that possibly be done? So I'll just ask you very briefly to get you involved a little bit. How many times, if anyone can jump in, has the U.S. government overthrown a Latin American government with the CIA in the past 50 years? 7 years. 10 times. Anyone else? Want to take a guess? All right, what are the case studies? Where? Nicaragua? successfully overthrown. Sorry? Panama, okay. With the CIA, okay, with the military. So now Chile, okay, Chile, 1973. Not a lot of examples are coming in, okay? I began my project because I wanted to find out, well, I wanted to prove that the CIA had overthrown the Bolivian government in 1964. That the CIA was responsible for the military coup that led Bolivia into 2 decades of military rule, Cold War dictatorship. Sadly, they didn't. So this is where process comes in. When I went to begin writing this project, and I realized that that's not what happened, I had a bit of a crisis. What am I going to write about? And I'm actually quite happy about the result, because if I had written a book about the CIA overthrowing the Bolivian government in 1964, about as many people in this room would have heard about it. You know, no one, you know, it's just one government being overthrown by the CIA, right? Big news. Instead of that, I found something much different, and that was developments. The development apparatus, the development enterprise, USAID, and the CIA, and its role perhaps in Third World militarization. We all know that the Third World, Africa, Latin America, and Asia, went under military dictatorships in the 50s and 60s. We also know that they were targeted by massive development programs. We tend to think of these things as contradictory. The military dictatorships came in to stop development, to stop change. But in fact, my research argues quite the opposite, that development had a role to play in the militarization of the Cold War, of the Third World during the Cold War. So I said I would read a little bit, and if you'll bear with me, I'll read actually the first couple of paragraphs of my forthcoming book. Okay. On the 1st of May, 2013, Bolivian President Evo Morales announced that his government was expelling the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. President Morales said, quote, "The times have passed when the United States could use charity as a fig leaf for manipulation, domination, and subjugation," end quote. Such passionate rejections of USAID are rare, but it's actually not the first time that the United States was accused of intervening in Bolivia under the cover of promoting economic development. In my book, I demonstrate through the narrative of USAID in the early 60s, just one example, July 1963. USAID, a development organization, sent $100,000 in military hardware to arm and equip an Indian peasant militia charged with eliminating, killing, 2 left-wing union leaders, depicted by USAID economists as obstacles to modernization and obstacles to development. To fully grasp the origins of Bolivia's long and tumultuous history with U.S. development programs, which has recently led to the ending of 70 years of U.S. development programs in Bolivia, my book returns to Washington's largest aid effort ever in Latin America, the Alliance for Progress, launched by John F. Kennedy in 1961. Later that same year, John F. Kennedy boldly predicted that the world was on the verge of a decade of development. Privately, however, he was a bit more prosaic, asking his staff, or reminding his staff, you know, in Latin America, the military forces can contribute substantially to economic development. In Latin America, he said, quote, "the military occupy an extremely important strategic position," end quote. It's actually 2 different quotations. So, how did I go from finding the CIA behind the coup in '64 to finding the CIA behind the development apparatus prior to '64? Well, Bolivia still had a civilian revolutionary government. How did I do this methodologically? Well, it was kind of a stretch, because I actually spent the first year of my dissertation research going to the National Archives in Washington, going to the Kennedy Library, and asking for all the CIA files, the Department of Defense files. I wanted to catch, you know, the government red-handed carrying out this coup. When I figured out that they didn't, you know, there was nothing there. Aside from my supervisor wanting to kick me out of my program, I said, what do I do? And slowly I started reading more and more literature about development, and recently there's been a lot of work done on development and modernization and their connection with authoritarianism and even militarization. So I went back to all the archives, became more and more expensive, and pulled all the USAID files, and the scales started falling from my eyes because I saw the CIA within the USAID apparatus. Actually, this occurred bureaucratically through the Office of Public Safety, run by Byron Engel, who was actually a CIA officer at the time, the USAID, Office of Public Safety, OPS, which is actually exactly the agency that sent the $100,000 of military weapons to Bolivia in July of 1963. So I went to archives all over the US, I've mentioned that. How else did I put together this book? Well, I spent 3 years doing field work in Bolivia, one thing that I sometimes lament that I'll probably never have the chance to do again. You know, I'm lucky to have a sabbatical, hint, but a sabbatical to spend maybe 9 months in Bolivia, but I spent 3 years doing field work in Bolivia, getting to know the archives, getting to know the libraries, getting to know the people. And so archival work in the Bolivian archives, and I also conducted many interviews with Bolivian protagonists, cabinet members of the government that was deposed, family members of the president who was deposed, military officers who were junior officers who helped to carry out the coup in 1964, left-wing leaders who actually worked with the military to overthrow the government. That was a narrative I had not expected to find. And then in the U.S., I also connected with several U.S. officials who had been in Bolivia at the time. The ambassador who was there at the time of the coup, the CIA station chief, who was a big find for me, and finally the air attaché, who was long claimed to be the father of the Bolivian coup, to have orchestrated the overthrow of the Bolivian government. The overthrown Bolivian government wanted to place their coup within the larger consensus of the U.S. overthrowing civilian governments and implanting military dictatorships in Guatemala in 1954 and then later in Chile in 1973. Bolivia just did not fit that narrative. So going back to all these documents, carrying out these interviews, and also doing a very systematic press survey of Bolivian and U.S. press, well, Bolivian press in general, and the U.S. press on Bolivia, which is actually where my students have been helping me at Embry-Riddle to go through the Bolivian press. Leanne Harworth, our interlibrary loan librarian, has done a great job of finding Bolivian newspapers on microfilm and getting them sent from wherever they are in the world, in the country usually. And my students have been going through microfilm and just pulling every article that has to do with, well, this second project, it's on guerrillas, guerrilla problems, military. Well, I'll talk. Actually, I don't have time to talk about the second project. But it's about guerrillas versus military dictatorship, but guerrillas against the dictatorship. Where am I now? Right. I was going to share with you a few narrative highlights from the book, if I may. I think we have about 10 to 15 minutes. Is that right? 15 minutes? Well, I thought it was 15 max. I'm going to stop at 15, wherever I am. But a couple of narrative highlights. Clearly, there's not time here to summarize my entire story. As a result, I'll just mention 3 narrative events that I highlight in my book as waypoints that led, during the development era, waypoints that led to Bolivia's 1964 coup. First of all, when Kennedy administration officials committed themselves to what they called economic development in Bolivia in 1961, they took dead aim at the country's unions, and the miners' unions in particular, this highly strategic industry in Bolivia. The architects of Kennedy's Alliance for Progress aid program constructed, in a discursive sense, miners, particularly communist miners, as obstacles to development and militarization. So it wasn't a far cry there to allocate development funding to bust up communist unions. And indeed, USAID conditioned massive aid funding on a requirement that the Bolivian government curb union power and physically remove communist union leaders from the mines. Throughout the early 1960s, that's number one. Number 2, throughout the early 1960s, the Bolivian military was called upon to play a central role in Kennedy's Alliance for Progress development programs. The military was called on to play a central role in development programs. This was both through union busting and strike busting programs in the mining camps, and in the countryside, in the largely indigenous peasant countryside, this was through a military civic action program that was actually then expanded to Vietnam. I mean, it wasn't directly because it worked in Bolivia, it was going to work in Vietnam, but Bolivia was one of the early cases for reasons I describe in the book, because it actually was a Bolivian idea in Bolivia, although other people were thinking in similar ways elsewhere. So this militarization of development in early 1960s Bolivia led to the conversion of large swaths of the country. While it was still under civilian rule, it led to conversion of large swaths of the country, mines, and countryside into military zones. And all this was in the name of development. It also prompted several violent clashes like the one I mentioned before, the CIA/USAID paramilitary operation in July 1963, which actually led to, eventually, the assassination was it failed. Actually, the CIA paramilitary that was sent was attacked by the miners first, and it was kind of like the Bay of Pigs, much smaller. No one really knows about this. I think I'm the first one to write about this. After this, they went after the miners again, and when they did that, they succeeded. They took the miners prisoner, put them in jail, and the mining camp sort of exploded in anger and kidnapped USAID officials, ironically. And they didn't miss the connection there. They actually put a big sign up behind their union hall where they had the hostages inside, and Time magazine came to take pictures. They said, I don't actually remember the exact, there was something about the working class against the calamity known as the Alliance for Progress. They clearly linked developments, as the U.S. knew it, with what they saw as the busting up of their union. Number three, the third narrative waypoint that leads right up to the coup d'etat, is that the growing reliance on Victor Pasestensoro's nationalist government, the one that was overthrown, the growing resistance to his development-minded authoritarian government, and took on an increasingly broad flavor in 1964. So in other words, the coup was not the CIA, the coup was the Bolivian people. It was a united front of left and right, communist Trotskyists on the left, phalangists and liberals on the right, all rising up in opposition to US-backed development programs. It was this anti-authoritarian front that created the conditions, is what I argue, it was this anti-authoritarian front that created the conditions for the overthrow of civilian government in Bolivia. In my narrative, and I think I'm the first to argue this, Bolivia's turn toward militarism in 1964 occurred in direct contradiction to Washington's wishes, not in accordance with Washington's wishes. In fact, I demonstrate in the closing pages of my book, President Johnson acquiesced in early November 1964, the night before the coup, to an additional arms request by his ambassador, who was a liberal Kennedy appointee, to put down the military revolt on behalf of the civilian government. So I have just 1 minute to conclude what this all means. The debate that has driven historiography on Kennedy's foreign policy, particularly in Latin America, falls into two camps. One group of historians contend that Kennedy policymakers cared genuinely about third world development, and they were frustrated by something. They were frustrated by Latin American elites, the unintended failure of their own ideas, or Kennedy's untimely death. That's a common line of argument. Another group of historians argue that the Kennedy administration was actually nothing new, that it closely adhered to Washington's perennial drive for political power and hegemony in the Western Hemisphere, developmentalist rhetoric notwithstanding. My work suggests that both groups are right. In short, that most U.S. liberals, many U.S. liberals, cared deeply about third world developments, and it was the connection of third world development with anti-communism that led them to fight so hard against the Bolivian left. They didn't even think of themselves as fighting because they didn't like communism. They thought themselves fighting for something, and that for something was development. The benefit of the Bolivian case study, in my view, is that it demonstrates how Kennedy's Alliance for Progress operated when development was perfectly compatible with the extension of U.S. power, where local leaders, such as President Pasestensoro, were fully dedicated to development, where the enterprise got off the ground very early, and where there was nothing stopping the development enterprise from arriving at its logical apogee in July of 1963, before Kennedy passed away. And in my book, I argue that the result of the development enterprise, at least in Bolivia, and I think in other places as well, as other scholars have found, the result of the development enterprise was decidedly and sadly authoritarian. For Bolivia, development was a framework within which the state exercised power, sometimes aggressively. Ideological development was the chosen strategy of U.S. liberals, and their ideas were vindicated as the United States achieved unparalleled influence in Bolivian society in the early 1960s. So, my book suggests that ideology is a crucial aspect of strategic studies. Liberals in Washington were salivating over the opportunity to guide the trajectory of revolutionary Bolivia. Meanwhile, Bolivian nationalists were hoping to leverage U.S. aid for their own political ends. And this was all within a framework of technocratic discourses about economic efficiency and economic development. But it was really a bloody battle being waged for the future of the country. And as I argue in the book, as tends to be the case in any violent conflict, the better armed faction won. And that was, of course, the Bolivian military. So I don't think we have time for questions, but maybe, no? Yeah, I'm right, it's 15 minutes. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Field. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Hayashibara from the College of Engineering. and he will tell us about the Boeing Aerospace Industry Academic Partnership Multi-University Collaboration.
Hi everyone, my name is Shigeo Hayashibara from College of Engineering, Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering Department. Today I want to talk about, it's not my research, but this is what I'm doing, and then all of a sudden Dean shows up. Okay, so that means I cannot really joke about it. So this is the title, Aerospace. Essentially, Boeing company, they have a sense of humor, so they make up lots of different acronyms so that no one can understand, but they try to make something meaningful. So aerospace stands for Aerospace Partners for Advancement in Collaborative Engineering. Obviously, they made up those terms. So anyway, but this description really indicates what we're doing here. And then based on the quote of a Boeing person who's doing this project, this is the future of engineering. That's what they talk about. So what we're doing is, essentially, Boeing company is trying to give us money, essentially money, not money, to build airplanes. Then airplane will be designed and built by, of course, college students, but it's not a single college. We team up with 4 different universities and make a team made up by different schools' students. Then how do you collaborate then? Well, we collaborate online. We don't meet each other, but we collaborate. We design together. We somehow build an airplane together. And somehow we make it fly at the very end, in front of Boeing people watching. So to me, at the beginning, this is joking, isn't it? But this is something what we're doing. So let's move on to the next slide. Well, it's very difficult to read, but I'm not expecting you to read this one. But this is actually a statement coming from Boeing company at the very beginning. About last year, 2013, it was probably right about this time frame. I was getting ready for summer time. And all of a sudden, chair of the department, Mark Sensmeyer, he's not here, that's good. He showed up and he came to my office and said, hey, Shigeo, we have a slight problem next year. You know, we have way too many senior students. Then our lab is out of capacity. We have about 5 students who cannot sit in our lab. Then would you like to take those 5 students, make one team, and then do something? You can do whatever you want. And I said, okay. Well, if it's only 5 students, okay. Then what should I do? I don't know. You come up with something. You do something. You can design something. So that was the beginning. And then about 2 months later, then Dean showed up in my office. And then he said, well, you know, we got the email from Boeing. And then they want us to join in the team of something called aerospace, which I'm not sure what it is, but would you like to do it? And I said, yeah. So that's all about aerospace. That's the beginning, that last year. And then this was actually very beginning of the new idea formed up in Boeing. And then Boeing first approached to Purdue University, Georgia Tech, and Brigham Young, BYU. So those 3 schools and the Boeing first came to agreement that, well, we have a problem here. And then we somehow make up a team of industry and schools, engineering schools, to solve this problem. The problem came from that, hey, we are going to lose our workforce very quickly. So this is the data showing Department of Defense, DoD, workforce. This is the average age of DoD employees. This data is 2008, so I think the problem is actually a little bit worse than 2008 now. So as you can see here, most of the people working at DoD sector are about getting ready to retire or eligible to retire. They are thinking about retiring. So it's aging group. So lots of white-haired people, working at the DOD, and they are thinking about retiring really soon. And then we are not really supplying the workforce of the young people to those DOD. That's a problem. And then, as you can see, the figure on the right-hand side and bottom, the maximum peak is the average age group who is going to be the most typical age in DOD. And then it's shifting upwards. So average age working at DOD are getting older and older and older, and it's progressing. So this is a common issue. And then let's take a look at the aerospace industry. This is a big company like Boeing, Raytheon, Cessna, you can name it. But aerospace industry, we have a much more severe problem because we have a peak of age group between 40 to almost 60, 40 to 60. Those are the majority of the workers right now. So they are about getting ready to retire. So about 34% of employees will be eligible to retire in 2013. They are losing bulk amount of people working at the aerospace industry. So how can we support this? We are losing workforce, and then we are not successful providing the young people to work in this industry. So we are Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and then Boeing says, you need to do something. Okay. So, and then afterwards, they say, hey, this is what we want. As long as your student satisfies those 20 requirements, we hire you. Okay, I give you a job offer right now if you have those 20. Well, this is the first page of 20 attributes, 1 to 10. As you go through those 10 lists, I went through it by myself. I satisfy only number 10 because I do speak two languages. Everything else, I don't know. Those are high requirements. Idealistic. How many people actually can satisfy everything? I'm not sure. And the next page, move on. This is more or less like no engineering guidance. They want the new employees to be perfect human beings who can actually run the company and understand everything, including politics, economy. And then, wait a minute, we are educating engineering, okay? I have no idea about accounting. I don't know how to count money. I just spend money. Anyway, so my reaction and everybody else's reaction by looking at this is, well, it's easy for you to say, but it's not really easy. I mean, but we are trying to educate people to meet those demands, and then 4 years, hopefully 4 years in engineering students. And they are supposed to be perfect people who satisfy all those 20 requirements, and then they're ready to go for one first day at the Boeing company. So they are all of a sudden designing airplanes. No, we cannot do that. So we all know that it's impossible. So this is our approach and Boeing's approach, and we agree this is probably very effective approach. So we try to make a partnership, industry-led partnership, and then multiple universities who agrees the spirit of this idea or concept join in as a team. So this is a multi-university team sponsored by industry. So, excuse me. So this is a multifaceted approach, and then we are trying to collaborate without looking at each other. So it's a massive online meetings. For example, our 5 senior students, 3 of them are working with Brigham Young University mainly. So this week they are at the BYU. In fact, they are traveling to BYU at Utah, Provo. And what they're doing, they are trying to assemble airplanes, trying to integrate their avionics into the airplane designed and built at BYU. At the same time, 2 people coming from Georgia Tech trying to put their landing gears on. And Purdue person came off from the wind tunnel testing and trying to tell them how it behaves on the airplane. And they are trying to, hopefully this weekend, they are trying to make airplane fly at Provo. And then they come back here, and then compile the final report to Boeing. That's what they're doing. Now, it sounds crazy. However, in terms of Boeing, this is what we do every day. So their idea is, it's not that we expect college to give us the student we want. We make the college the Boeing. So your senior students are not really student anymore. You are half-time Boeing employee. You act like a Boeing employee. You just do things that we usually do every day. So we're going to give you the software that we use for you guys to use. So this is what we do. One of the challenge here is students. How do they collaborate with students who never met, and they cannot really meet in person because they teamed up with student from Georgia Tech, student from Purdue, student from BYU. They cannot meet each other. They just chat over online. They try to share files. They try to make up a document across the net. They try to somehow maintain the database of their CAD drawings. They do make up analysis model, and then one person builds the model, the other person runs the model, third person analyzes the model, fourth person make up a report. How do they do such a thing? That's a challenge. Now, this is a real teamwork, and then, quite frankly, it's a different level of teamwork. We cannot really produce that kind of stuff by one university alone. Simply because this is multi-university, students are challenged to communicate with people in different backgrounds, which is a huge challenge. So this is the systematic approach that the Boeing came up with. Boeing and the software company called CoPU. CoPU is a software provider, and then they make similar to Blackboard, but it's a corporate kind of Blackboard. It's an educational platform. So Boeing trying to use this software and put all the information for the coursework. So the course materials are provided by Boeing people. So people who work on composite material, aerodynamic design, structural testing, those are the people who actually do lecture. And then they put those lectures in the CoPU website. So the student can log in and take a look at it. And then every week, Tuesday and Thursday, we get together online, and then we use Cisco WebEx. This is online meeting software. So students just log in online, take a look at the figure on the top left. That is the image of every week. Students sit in front of the computer, and then somebody do a lecture, including myself. I did the lecture like 5 times in front of my computer, no audience, which is very weird. It seems like I'm talking to a mirror. And then very uncomfortable because there's no response. So I talk to my computer screen, assuming that somebody is listening the other side. No response. Then after I complete my lecture and saying, is there any question? Then dead silence. Is somebody online? And, yeah, we're online, we're online, we're online. Okay, do you have any question? Dead silence. It's a very uncomfortable lecture. You should probably experience that. But it's a very, very new experience for me also. It's online communication. It's always one way. There's no response. There's always an audience beyond your imagination. Somebody, maybe executive vice president of Boeing may be listening to my lecture, but I never know. So that is the new way of lecture and provided to multi-universities through online. Everybody join in, everybody can jump in and ask questions. If I get stuck, somebody probably back me up. Hopefully somebody from Boeing says, hey, Dr. H, I can jump in and add you something. Actually, it happened once. I was like, oh, God. So simple. Anyway, so it's a very, very new way of lecture, and seems like students are enjoying. One of the interesting things is you don't have to go to classroom because it's 100% online lecture. So I asked Professor Helbring to do one lecture of structures. He did his lecture from his home with pajama, with some program from pajama, but we never know because as long as you have online device, you can do lecture. You can start lecture anywhere, and then if you have an online device like a smartphone, everybody has it, they can participate in lecture at anywhere. So this really revolutionized how the classroom will be in the future. So Boeing says, hey, this is what we do. Because we cannot get together all the time. Somebody cannot be here always. But that somebody can participate online. So that's what we do. So, okay, that's something very new for us. And the students are challenged. And then how easy it is for students to start working on a design project and start designing airplanes with the people who never met. You only know that person through online chat. You never met in person. And then you start working with that person designing airplanes. Now this week is probably the best week for them because they're actually going there, meeting first time after a year and a half of a collaboration. They meet in person at Brigham Young and they actually start building airplanes. Which is, for me, I said, are you guys actually doing this in there in Boeing? They said, yes, we do. I have some colleagues we never met, working about 5 years. We only meet online. Oh, okay. So those are the kind of attributes that they want, and we are trying to satisfy those, which is very, very challenging. What is the benefit of what we're doing? It's actually very good. It's beyond our imagination. I started out small last year, and then I couldn't imagine this becomes such as the higher award. This is a very prestigious award from U.S. News and World Report. So this is listed on the magazine. And then this year, they are nominated in Golden Prize, $500,000 prize of the National Academy of Engineering. I'm not sure if they win it or not, but they are finalists right now. A group of us, including Embry-Riddle, Purdue, BYU, Georgia Tech, Boeing. Our team is nominated as a finalist. So everybody thinks this is a great idea, as long as if it works. And then to me, is it working? It is working. In fact, it was tremendously difficult at the beginning. Our 5 poor senior students, they are about to explode for the first probably 1 month or so. So I spent most of my time not teaching, but trying to comfort them for the first 1 month, because the teaching portion comes from from Boeing people online. I don't have to teach anything, but I have to take care of the mentality and hey, don't grow up, don't kill each other. This is just only senior design. Don't worry about it. This is not the real, although it seems awfully real. This is still college class, okay? So then they need to be reminded. Now they are very confident because they pick up so many important things, such as how can we work as a team with people that I never met? What is the most important thing? Students has a wrong idea. I have to know a lot. I have to have lots of knowledge. I need to be a really good student. 4.0 GPA, how's that? Then I can work with people. No. You need to be a friend first. You need to trust each other. You need to listen to what other people say. Then build the trust. And only after that, the teamwork starts working. Those are very fundamental essentials, and students never experience probably in academia because you don't have to do that as long as you're a college student. But all of a sudden, you're thrown into the real thing. Then you need to behave a certain way, otherwise no one will talk to you. So students went through those stages, and then now they are very, very happy and excited working together with students from other schools. That's actually great. So this concludes my presentation, but this is a bright future. This is what Boeing wants from our engineering students. Then they desperately need workforce. They are losing them. And then they really want us to supply, and then supply really good, excellent, educated, trained, ready to go type of engineering students. And then this project seems to meet those demands. So, thanks so much.
Questions? Dr. Grau?
I've been involved in this kind of situations, and I found that if early in the program you spent the money brought everybody together in one place at one time and spend a day together, that it greatly improved the efficiency of communication.
That was actually very true for faculty teams, because I am a faculty of Embry-Riddle. I had to work together with faculty from other schools, which is a nightmare. Professors of Georgia Tech thinks this very strongly, which I totally disagree. And Purdue professor, he is very soft-spoken, but he doesn't do certain things, but he does something which I never understand. BYU professor, I mean, everyone has their own opinion, their own style, their own successful senior design project. They don't want to step back and say, hey, okay, let's do this because you said no. So every Friday I had a faculty meeting. That was a nightmare. It's almost like yelling each other over the telephone. Now, we had a face-to-face meeting last year in December. I went to Georgia Tech and everybody got together. And that was like, oh my goodness, you are the professor of BYU, right? Wow, okay. Then I was wrong. You are probably the most wonderful person on the face of the earth. I didn't know. Then all of a sudden, this spirit of teamwork started to build. That's great. Actually, very, very great feeling. And then hopefully the students right now at the BYU, they have the same spirit built up this week. Otherwise, their airplane won't fly. So yeah, thank you for that comment, but I do agree. This is a really great experience.
And our fourth speaker is Nick Manderfield, Professor Manderfield from the College of Aviation, and he has been the organizer of the monthly ERAU Prescott Aviation History Program for many years.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. When Sarah asked me to talk, she said Dr. Bowen had recommended you and Dr. Bloom had concurred. So I found it hard to say no to that. Nevertheless, I feel a little bit out of place, kind of like the Muppets thing, you know, which one of these does not belong, which one of these is not like the others. There's certain terms that are generally not associated with Nick Manderfield. Some of them include tall, some of them include young, some of them include bushy head of hair, and research, okay? So my presentation is going to be a little bit different than the other ones. What I want to talk about is the Embry-Riddle Prescott Aviation History Program that I've been involved with for many years. So what I'd like to do is to talk about a little bit about what it is and how it got started and how it's developed into what it is today, which is actually a marvelous collection of oral histories. I'll share with you some of the more memorable ones and then give you kind of some facts and figures about what we have. The Embry-Riddle program is offered, is on once a month, every time the school is in session. It's on, generally it's over in a DLC and we fill it up. It's all volunteers. And we have presentations that go anywhere from World War I, as you can see here, all the way up to the space program. Now what I'm going to be showing you as I go through this is the flyers that I've developed over the years to kind of help to publicize it. And it'll also give you some insight into what's in the program. It started very humbly way back in 2006 by three people, myself, Dr. Valerie Adams, who used to be here and taught aviation history, and a civilian gentleman by the name of Tom Britton. Tom was probably in his late 70s at that time and was the president for 3 years of the American Aviation Historical Society, the nationwide society. And they have national chapters around the countries, and he thought it would be appropriate, the leading aviation school, that we have a chapter at Embry-Riddle, and so that's what we were attempting to do. And there was some precedent for that down in Phoenix. They have a chapter that's been there for decades, and they have speakers, and so this is what we were intending to do. So we started with what you see right here. We had an individual come in who flew B-29s. We had about 30 people there, and it was fairly successful, so we decided to move on. We had this lady, and what I discovered was we have people out there who have wonderful stories to tell, and so what I did was to help her take her pictures, scan it, and she made a marvelous presentation. She was flying aircraft very similar to the Wasps in the British Isles. Since then, I've done this for 6 of the people, so I'll mention some of these as we go through. what we tried to do was to figure out a format so that everybody would know what it was, and so what we wanted to do was kind of get a picture of you know, what was going to be on. This is a particular example. What was interesting also about this one is Valerie Adams at this point left. She decided to go down to Phoenix. So Tom Britton and I looked at each other and we said, well, let's keep this going. I think we've got something here. From time to time, we would have presentations that would be joined. For example, we had a presentation on Ernest J. Love, who's the airport is named after, and then Nancy Burgess, the historian for the city of Prescott, made a presentation. And it was at this point we began to videotape these. So most of the presentations that I will follow here have actually been videotaped. From time to time we would have our own professors. So all of you know Bill Waldock. He made an interesting presentation here. Since then we've had a total of 12 Embry-Riddle faculty and staff that have made presentations. Eventually, I started to come up with a kind of a standard format. This is a good example of it. We wanted to show the individual who was giving the presentation. This particular one, Chuck Cole, who lives right over here in Dewey. So we began to develop a standard format, and that would be very helpful for the things in the future. This one was unique, and this marked the first time we had someone from out of state. Most of the speakers we have come from Arizona, but we've now had 5 from California. We've had 1 from Nevada, and we're hoping to have a couple next year from New Mexico. This one was kind of interesting for 2 reasons. Bill O'Hara, some of you may know, had newly arrived at this time, and Bill was the pilot who actually did the flying in the movie True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But the other first about this, there was a new person at the campus. His name was Frank Ayers, and he was at this particular, this is the very first one, and he became a strong supporter of the program.
But I did not fly in True Lies.
But he did not fly in True Lies, that's exactly right. However, and I want you guys to hold him to, he has volunteered several times to do a presentation on the B-52, so he keeps telling me that if I need someone, he's ready to do it, so you keep pushing him, okay? This particular one was also unique, and because this was the first out of the College of Aviation, so Kim made a fascinating presentation. Since then, we've also had presentations made by Bob Berlin from the College of Aviation, so we're open to everyone coming in and helping out with the presentations. Okay? This one was unique in that this is the first time a student did it. So Stephen Rayleigh made a presentation on flying UAVs in Iraq, and later he would make a second one. So excellent presentation. So we also have students involved. So if students are interested, I'm looking for you. All right. What you will notice here is, and I boxed it in green, is we dropped any pretense of having anything to do with the American Aviation Historical Society. And in fact, Tom Britton, who has passed away after a long illness, so it's basically just a couple of us that are doing this. So from this point on, it is the Embry-Riddle ERAU Prescott Aviation History Program, and that's what it is today. Okay? Now, there are many programs. We have never had a bad one. We've had some that had wider appeal than others, so I thought I would highlight for you just a couple that are among the most memorable. And let me begin with this one right here. The gentleman that you see there, he was there last night. He is 92 years old, just as fit as can be, and he flew C-47s and Pathfinders during the D-Day invasion, and again, he had lots of documents, pictures, that I was able to help him put together into a nice PowerPoint presentation, so very, very interesting. I suppose everybody in the room has heard of the SR-71, but were you aware that we have 2 SR-71 pilots living in Prescott? So Pat Bledsoe and Tom Heinechek came out and made a fantastic presentation and talked about what it was like to fly this remarkable airplane. Right. From time to time, I would partner with various people, various agencies. So this occurred a couple of years ago during the Veterans Day celebrations. Lou Rothman, 94-year-old, was honored at the Veterans ceremonies over at the Activity Center, and then we provided a venue for him the next evening. And this marvelous guy sat up on the stage with in a folding chair. We had pictures behind him, and he simply told what it was like to be at Pearl Harbor and Midway. So marvelous gentleman. He would also pass away about a year later, as many of our World War II vets are doing. This lady right here is a local, and I don't know whether if any of you have seen this, but what was interesting about this, her father flew C-47s, dropped parachutists, was in the Krieger drop, and a couple of things. He had access to lots and lots of color film, so he shot hours of rare 16mm color film. He also sent letters back to his wife almost every day. So Kay has put together a fascinating presentation, and she digitalized all this, and she would show it and then stop and talk about what was going on and quote from his letters back to his home. Marvelous presentation, really down to earth what was going on in the war, not only in the battlefield, but just around the camp. This is another one. We partnered with the Diversity and Women's Center on this one. Some of you may have seen this, but the Tuskegee Airmen were here one day. They spoke to the ROTC, and then we had a venue for them. We had 2 of the original Tuskegee Airmen there, as well as a half a dozen or so from the chapter down in Phoenix. Marvelous people. Most of you have heard of the U-2, and Art Sabowski, former College of Aviation professor, flew the U-2. He also commanded the U-2 outfit in the Air Force, and he made an early presentation for me, and then made the mistake of saying, you know, Nick, I've got an updated one if you'd like that. And I said, would I ever? So he made a great presentation, and what was so interesting about it, he also focused on not just flying the airplane and the aircraft, but what it was like, the physiological needs. So if you think about sitting in an airplane for 8 hours, how do you? Okay? That's the sort of thing that he got into the presentation. Very, very interesting. So just to kind of wrap this up, this is sort of where we are today. We've had 52 programs. The 52nd was last night. 44 different speakers, so we've had a couple of them that had done twice, and the record was one person who did it 3 times. 36 of these have been videotaped, and 9 of them are on Scholarly Commons right now, and we are adding more, so we hope to add another dozen or so in the next year. 12 of the current or former Embry-Riddle professors or students have made presentations, so if anybody would like to make one, I'm sure willing to have you on. Most, as I said before, do come from Prescott or Arizona, but we've had 5 from California, 1 from Nevada, and I'm working on getting 2 from New Mexico. 3 joint presentations that we've had so far. Our audiences are filling up the DLC. We're averaging about 250 to 300 people. Many of those are from the local community. If you look at the Prescott Courier, you'll see them regularly in there. They end up on the front page, so we're getting lots of good publicity. And bottom line, it's been a lot of fun, and we've provided an opportunity for people to tell their stories, and they've got some wonderful stories to tell. So I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon. And by the way, the next program is Wednesday, the 9th of April, so I hope I see some of you there. And if you're curious as what it's going to be, this is what it's going to be. So we're going to have a light-hearted look at submarines for aviators. So we want to broaden it a little bit. So this gentleman is a docent at the Pima Air Museum. He's made this presentation twice, so it should be pretty interesting. So thank you very much.
This concludes this year's program. Thank you so much for our speakers and all of the authors, and we'll see you again next year. Thanks for coming.